Hey everyone, welcome back. We're Screen14 Pictures. I'm Grant.
I'm Victoria.
And I'm Josh.
And we like to go to movies and then talk about them. We've been doing it for a couple years and we just wanted to make that available to you and you could join the discussion with us. So we like to see movies and then go out and have coffee, maybe some dessert, and just break them down. Talk about what we like, what we didn't like, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense.
And just to put this out there first and foremost, we know how incredible it is that any movie, any TV show, any web series, anything is ever made and actually produced.
Yeah.
So we want to honor that and recognize that and put it out there that we totally respect it. And any criticisms that we have, we recognize that it is incredible that anything ever gets done at all.
Yes.
And if we have any critique, it's like what we would love to see ourselves. But we're not trying to say like they're horrible and terrible, because you never know what might have happened on set that day with the writer, with the director, with the actor. If something went wrong, you just never know.
Yeah, we're not critics. Also, should be said up front, full spoilers ahead for anything that we talk about.
Yeah.
So be warned.
Yeah. Justice League.
Justice League.
Justice League.
Justice League.
We went and saw it on just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fresh for us. It's the fourth in the DC universe, is that right?
Is it the
Fifth.
Is it the fifth?
Yeah.
Wait, what's the first one?
Man of Steel.
Okay.
BVS.
Right? Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman and Suicide Squad.
Oh, I always forget Suicide Squad.
Many people do.
Yeah. Not that I didn't like it, it just like it because it doesn't have any crossover characters.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't think we saw any of
I
them.
mean, Batman.
Right, but I guess he does have a little bit of a cameo in Suicide Squad.
Tiny
Yeah.
cameo.
So after seeing the film, I wanted to just open it up. What were your just kind of general impressions, and then maybe we can break it down bit by bit. What did you walk away thinking about Justice League?
I had fun. I went in with really low expectations for a couple different reasons. BVS wasn't my favorite, though I recently saw the director's cut and liked it a lot more.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I had also tried to go in without seeing any spoilers. I didn't really see very many trailers. I saw like the teaser. I tried to go in without seeing any critics or anything. But I listened to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of them talk about movies, and the title of one of the podcasts kind of gave me a little bit of a spoiler.
What was it?
Well, they just said that they had a mediocre response, and some of the people are big comic book fans, and so I trust them.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to like a lot of the same movies that they like.
Yeah, so it kind of gave you like you were coming in already at an angle.
Yeah. So I went in thinking like I am going in to have fun, to see some superheroes beat up on some things. And so that's exactly what I got, and I enjoyed that. I'm really glad I saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
I want to say, I don't know the Rotten Tomatoes score, but I think it's probably better than what the critic score is.
I don't know what it is at this very moment, but I think it was hovering around like 40. Or
Yeah,
something like that.
I would go higher than that for me.
The critics was around 40. I think the audience score was around like 86?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, there's quite a disparity.
Which is, the same sort of disparity on BVS, but not quite as pronounced, I think, as this one.
It was. What did you think, Josh?
I also had a lot of fun. I came out of the movie really hyped up. I thought it was a ton of fun. I think as we started talking about it, there were a lot of things to kind of unpack and talk about and discuss, and choices that the three of us would have made a little differently. But I think on the whole, it was a really fun movie. I thought it was a pretty successful follow-up to BVS.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I agree. I think this happens with a lot of movies, especially sort of the popcorn flicks that we go out and we see, like the big flashy pictures. Walking away, I'm like, oh, that was really fun, and I enjoyed myself. And then you start to think about the story, or you think about the script, or what's on the page, or you think about maybe a couple opportunities that could have been executed differently. Yeah. And you think, oh, there's some holes, there's some room for improvement. I walked away saying, wow, this clearly, like they've been taking the notes about injecting levity into the story, because I liked Batman versus Superman. I liked its sort of darker, brooding aesthetic, and I think a lot of people said it was such a far cry from sort of the fun that people over in the Marvel camp are having, that they brought a lot of that in. So there was a little bit of a discord for me in that there's a lot of humor injected and like jokes that are thrown in, but also it's still holding on to some of that desaturated look and dark tone in some places. So I found myself a little bit confused, maybe a little bit of discord, because there's villain who's going to destroy the world and wreck all of what we know and love, but they're also like cracking wise. And
So you felt like it was a little uneven tonally?
I did, and for me, I just recognized, oh wow, like they're doing jokes now. Like this is them doing their best humor, which is something that's become a trademark of the Marvel films, like the heroes just loosing like a bon mot right in the middle of a battle, and
can you define bon mot?
like a witticism or like a little quip.
Or like the brunch runner, that whole thing was like...
Yeah.
Do you feel like that was a misstep?
No, I think that is what let me have that initial response of walking away and saying, like, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Because I was able to laugh and enjoy some of the lighter moments. But as I thought about the story, I realized, oh, that made it kind of surfacey a little bit to me, in that the world was under threat of complete annihilation, but it didn't seem like people knew that or were recognizing the weight of that threat.
I would totally agree with that statement, in that it didn't feel like the world felt very threatened. For me, I don't think the root of that problem was the comedy, because I really enjoyed that they brought that in, and I don't know if we credit that to Joss Whedon kind of stepping in and helping, or if some of that was in there before. There must have been some, because it would have been a lot of reshoots.
Yeah, no, and I think the Flash just kind of, his character lends
Yeah.
itself to a little bit more humor. We even saw that just a tiny little bit in BVS, in that Flash vision thing.
Yeah.
They're like, am I too soon? I'm too soon, that whole kind of thing. And so it kind of foreshadowed it a little bit. And so I think his presence in the movie gave them an opportunity to, and I think they seized on it in a really good way.
Yeah. As for the weight, the stakes, I should say, they didn't feel extremely high. I know that we have a family in... I just assumed it was like Russia, something.
They said Russia at some
Was
point.
it? Yeah.
But I have no idea where in Russia.
Yeah, I don't know where in Russia. It's a big country. And we saw just one family there where Steppenwolf kind of created his headquarters. And I think we were supposed to feel scared for them. They were our avatar, and they were the people being threatened. But... I don't know. I think a lot of comic book movies, there was so much pushback about like destruction and how many people are dying in BVS, in other films, that a lot of comic book movies are like focusing on making sure that there are no casualties, which really takes away some of the stakes for me. And I think you guys agree with that.
Yeah.
It's just not as scary.
Yeah, Man of Steel rung that bell, where there was a lot of collateral damage in Metropolis and a lot of loss of life. And since then, you hear these little lines that are clearly added, like, the business district is completely empty. So fortunate there are no humans present. And this movie took it to an extreme, such that there were 8 civilians threatened at one point, and then there was a single family that served as an avatar for us to be, I guess, concerned about the loss of life in the Russia set piece. But apart from that, it seemed like the superheroes were bouncing about and fighting the baddies with big, flashy, splashy CGI action sequences, and there weren't any civilians around. Before we go into story notes, I thought it might be helpful to do like a quick primer. The movie sets up the fact that in Superman's absence, the world is now vulnerable to threats from abroad, including extraterrestrial threats. So the villain Steppenwolf becomes the primary antagonist when he seeks to find 3 mother boxes, which when united will create a kind of unity that will revert Earth to the, what was it?
The hellscape?
Primordial
hellscape of Steppenwolf's homeworld, which is Apocalypse. But it's never mentioned by name in the film. Essentially, he's trying to find the 3 boxes, and Batman is trying to get together the team of metahumans, including Aquaman, The Flash, Wonder Woman, and Cyborg. So he needs to get them together because they can't fight this incredible force alone. So he's trying to assemble the Justice League. And that's when the Atlanteans defend their box, and the Amazonians defend their box, and the World of Men has a box as well, and so he's trying to find them and put them together.
And they defend it.
how did you feel about kind of just story in general? Did you have anything that bumped for you or things that you would have done differently? Like, maybe let's just talk about how the movie unfolded. Act 1, we had to set up a lot of characters, right? I think the thing that this movie is struggling to do, it's unfortunate, is that it's skipping over the origin stories of several key players. And the movie wants you to be excited about them coming together and forming the Justice League, but we don't even know who they are yet. So we have to spend a few minutes here and a few minutes there establishing these characters. Did that work for you guys?
Well, before we talk about that, if you don't mind,
Sure.
can we talk about your personal histories with, like, how well do you know the DC universe and what your history is with those characters? Because that, at least for me, will inform my answer to that question. For example, I grew up watching Batman and Wonder Woman, the TV shows.
Okay.
So that version of Batman is probably more my favorite version, Adam West. I think of my Batman as a little bit more campy and less intense. And while I
So like Christian Bale.
Yeah, exactly. Like Adam West, Christian Bale, interchangeable. I really enjoyed the Batman Dark Knight. I liked that series, that trilogy, but it's not like my preferred Batman probably. I like a Batman that has some levity, because in the end he is a man dressing up in a bat suit and just has incredible amounts of money.
He's rich.
He's rich. And then Wonder Woman I watched as well because they were back to back and my great-grandmother had cable. So I've always loved those two characters. And then I have watched, in the past, I'm not up to date, I don't watch anymore, but I've watched Arrow and The Flash on TV. So I'm familiar with those characters through that.
Sure.
Otherwise, Cyborg and Aquaman and, who am I missing? Superman. I know Superman as well as anybody on the street knows Superman. I think he's a little overpowered. I said it, guys. And then Aquaman and Cyborg, I don't know super well. I don't really know their stories or anything. Do you?
No, I mean we've played the DC deck building game before, and so I know them from that. I was never really into comics growing up, so I don't have that history. I watched the Adam West Batman, but I did not watch Wonder Woman. I did not know she was on right after him.
At least on my channels.
At least on your channels.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean I also know Superman about as well as I think anybody does, not comic book wise, but I did watch Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman with Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher.
Yeah, I did watch that.
Loved that show, which also was like a little bit more of like a, I don't know if it was campy, like it was almost like a soap opera-y Superman, which was fun. And that being my initial introduction to Superman, everything that came after was kind of like, oh, this doesn't fit the tone that I'm used to, but no comics. No comics over here.
Same for me. I never read comic books growing up. I never saw the Adam West or the Linda Carter.
Oh,
what?
I am completely unfamiliar with that.
Missed it.
I didn't
How
see
did I marry him?
any of the original Batman movies or Superman movies. My first exposure would have been to the remakes or the reboots, with like the Brandon Routh Superman Returns.
Ooh.
And the Dark Knight trilogy. So my exposure to Batman is a darker Batman with the Nolan perspective, as well as I grew up watching the Batman animated series, like the cartoon, right alongside X-Men and Spider-Man. And so my exposure to the comics came in the form of animated series and then playing a lot of DC deck building. So my understanding of the DC Extended Universe is based upon what they've presented in these 5 films, as well as my understanding of the characters through the animated series, but never before the cinematic, apart from the Nolan trilogy. So when I walk into the movie, I don't bring to bear the fullness of the Aquaman lore or the cyborg backstory, and a little bit of the Flash, I guess, because of the CW show, like you mentioned.
He didn't really watch it, but I watched it.
I
when you
watched it
live
by
together.
proxy.
Osmosis.
Yeah. So given that, how well do you feel like you know these characters then? Because during the first act, this Justice League had the burden of setting up Aquaman, Flash, Cyborg. We know Wonder Woman from her movie. Hopefully, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. Hopefully, we know Superman. And even though Batman, we haven't had a Ben Affleck Batman movie within this universe, we all know kind of the Batman story just by being alive, but also they set it up in BVS.
And we don't necessarily know this Batman story.
True.
He's been doing it for decades, and he's old and a little bit grizzled and a little bit jaded. So
What's more, the Frank Miller Batman, which I've watched those, the Frank Miller animated features.
nice.
Are there several?
I think there's two parts.
Okay.
Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and 2. I don't know.
Oh wait, so did we watch the whole thing?
I think we might have.
Yeah.
We did. You're right. Getting ready for BBS, we watched
But
that.
that's a much more like grown-ups Batman.
Yeah.
Very much more violent. It's not the beginning of his career. It's kind of the tail end of his career.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where they're drawing a lot of this inspiration
Yeah.
from.
To that end, I thought they did a valiant job in setting up the story. Like, I cared about the Flash's interaction with his father. I want to see more of that because I think Ezra Miller brought a lot of really winning youthful energy to the portrayal. I did not connect as much with the Cyborg story. He felt a little bit brooding and unable to reconcile his new body. So to me, he was a little bit kind of like emo teenager.
I just don't think he didn't have a lot of time. There wasn't a lot of time spent on his character in general.
No one did.
No. And what time we did have with him, he's not the most chatty of characters.
Well, and he's a little one note until he's not.
Yeah. And I didn't feel like he had a lot of personality.
Yeah.
Is that fair? We didn't spend a lot of time with the Flash, but he had a personality. He made jokes, he was awkward, he was kind of this teenager still coming of age. And that was really nice to see. I just didn't know what to make of Cyborg or Aquaman, to be honest. I was supposed to think Aquaman was this kind of strong but outsider, prodigal son, I guess. I don't really know. He was bitter.
He was bitter.
Yeah. Not living his best life.
No,
as they
that's
say.
that's a good way of saying it. I just don't feel like I know much about Aquaman by the end of this. And the glimpses that we had into his life, when he went back to Atlantis to try and protect the box, he has this one little conversation with Amber Heard. Is that her name?
That's the actress's name, yeah.
Yes, I don't know what her
Fishwoman #1.
fish name was. And it was supposed to give us an idea of kind of Aquaman's story about how his mother gave him up to live on land, I guess.
To protect him.
To protect him.
Yeah.
We're
But-
showing our naivete for Aquaman's storyline.
Yeah, see? Like, I really don't know.
Well, and I would think, to be fair, we're also showing a little bit the thin nature of how they presented him.
Yeah.
True.
That 2-minute blast of hey, here's essentially one movie's origin story in a single scene.
Yeah.
Care about this person, go.
Yeah. I would have, and to compare it to Avengers, because that's kind of the easiest comparison. The MCU had the opportunity to do the origin stories for a lot of those characters before having the Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
And so the heavy lifting was done. So this film, unfortunately, had to set up 3 characters, and I just don't know if that's possible to set up origin stories and to do them justice.
Yeah, I mean, I think as much as maybe they wanted to kind of forge their own path, go their own way, I think and it's not necessarily the Marvel way, it's just good storytelling.
Yeah.
Setting up your characters ahead of time and then having them team up. It just, everything felt a little rushed, and because they are so responsive to fan criticism, and one of the criticisms of BVS is that it was too long, they made this movie 30 minutes shorter
Could have
than
been
the
longer.
theatrical cut. And so they were trying to jam in origin stories and the team up into a shorter movie, and I just think everything felt so fast.
Yeah.
And I don't think the moments that they wanted to feel impactful felt as impactful, and I think we just straight up missed some things because we didn't have time to show them.
One of those things that they seemed to want you to care about was the resurrection of the Superman character. We find at the end of Batman vs. Superman that he's dead. Earth's hero is dead, and that allows all these threats to come in, and the darkness on Earth is increasing. So the movie wants you to believe that he's really passed away, and they don't include him in any of the advertisement as far as I could see. And they move pretty quickly to bring him back to life, and
Well, I mean, it's halfway through the film he comes back
like
to
that's
life.
true. I don't mean
Yeah.
literally that they brought him back too quickly. I mean that his resurrection, I thought, was achieved in a fairly easy way. It seemed
Yeah.
that the mother box was at once the MacGuffins that things were looking, that Steppenwolf and everyone's fighting for, also the means by which Cyborg was created, and the means by which Superman is resurrected.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like it was just this mysterious cosmic force that was doing both harm and good.
It's powerful but neutral in nature.
Well, and its powers are not well defined, and the idea to bring back Superman using the mother box was a theory that worked the first time perfectly.
Yeah.
And so that whole resurrection beat was just like, I think we can do this, we're going to do it, we did it, he's back. There wasn't a whole lot of build up to it, and before you knew it, it was kind of over. And I think at the end of BVS, I think it's a little misleading, and I think it leads me to believe that they didn't know where they were going to go, because we see the dirt on the coffin start to move, and I mean, what is that other than Superman's life force possibly returning to him or something, and that's just not addressed at all.
Right.
Yeah.
And instead of having him be healed in the coffin by the earth, or instead of any other means to bring him back, we go this mother box route, which is kind of a forced resurrection, which I think it diminishes his return just a little bit.
And that's sort of jumping into Act 2. The heroes fight and are thwarted by Steppenwolf, so they realize that they are indeed going to need to bring back their heavy hitter in Superman. And when they do so...
And also their friend.
Yeah, their friend, not just the muscle. When they do so, I thought it cracked open some really interesting issues. Even Aquaman says, I don't know if we should bring someone back in this way. You don't know what they have lost. Will he have a soul? Mm-hmm. Will he be the same person?
He said definitively, you lose something when you die.
Yeah.
And I thought that those were really intriguing issues. And when Superman came back, they had to sort of unpack that, because he wasn't the same. And that could have been a whole movie. I think we talked about how interesting that could have been if they had taken a little bit more time there. But it seemed like he moved fairly quickly.
Well, they had so much to do. He was a means to an end. And I agree. I think the issues of whether or not to resurrect a person once you have the powers to do that, I think it's a really interesting question and a really interesting debate.
Super fascinating conversation.
Yes. And could have been the question of the movie. It wasn't, but it could have been. They did unpack it a little bit between Wonder Woman and Batman, and all of them. They were in, I don't know where they were. It wasn't the Batcave, was it? When they talked about it, was it the Batcave?
I think they were in his compound somewhere.
And that's when Batman and Wonder Woman kind of went head to head a little bit, because Wonder Woman kind of accuses Batman of wanting to bring back Superman to relieve his own guilt for Batman's death.
Superman's death.
I'm sorry, Superman's death. Thank you. Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, when you look at the way the Marvel Universe is structured, you finally have Tony and Cap facing off in Civil War with these two competing ideologies. And this is the first time in the DC Universe that we've really had these... I mean, BVS, we kind of have, like, the way in which you go about fighting crime and how you do it in Collateral Damage. We have that disagreement. Mm-hmm. But here we have, like, a fundamental, like, should we bring him back? Should we not? Is it better for the team? Is it just for your own personal gain? Is it because you feel guilty? Like, Tony felt guilty for Sokovia. Like, we have that moment, and it just, like everything else in the movie, it's gone.
Yeah.
They even call it out in that the emotional heft of the film seems to want to rest on Lois Lane's sense of loss and how she's moving forward with life, as well as with Martha Kent in the absence of Superman and after Clark's passing. And they don't really let us engage with Lois. Like, Batman never goes to talk to her and says, to bring up, should we bring him back? Shouldn't we bring him back? How would you feel about that?
Also, there's a possibility that we could bring him back. This guy you've been missing.
Well, in addition to all of that, like, they weren't 100% sure that the Mother Box would bring him back.
Nope.
Yeah.
And so in addition to all of the questions, like, of whether or not you should, are you able, will this actually work, and will it hurt him in some way as well? Just fascinating questions. But you were talking about Lois Lane.
Yeah, they just kind of glazed over some of those things that could have been really nice emotional hooks, where we could have found some chance to explore how Lois would feel about that, or how Martha would feel about that, or how any of the characters would feel about anything, so that we can latch on and feel with them.
To something, yeah.
Yeah.
A missed opportunity, another missed opportunity, I think, was the Superman comes back. We talk about how he's going to be missing something, he's going to be different, and he is for this first scene. And we get to see this really cool look inside of what he's seeing, and he sees through their bodies and to their skulls and
X-ray vision.
yeah, and there's this like really like strange thing that's happening with him, and then the big guns come in. Lois comes in, and she affects him in some way where he is fairly immediately back to normal, and we never revisit the fact that he is, if he has lost something, we don't know what it is, or it's been replaced or resurrected with him in the memory of Lois or whatever, but we never really revisit that, like, the most powerful being in the universe, if there's something wrong with him, that's super interesting. Like, if there's like a wire that hasn't been reconnected or whatever, that I find that super fascinating, and we just didn't explore it.
Well, and I think for us, after we like have talked about it, that is kind of what we wish Justice League had been about, at least in the setup. Is that fair? The questions of whether or not to bring back Superman, and then maybe Superman coming back and not being whole immediately, and our first and second act, it's more the Justice League focusing on getting Superman. And you don't want to have another BVS where everybody's fighting Superman, but just a little bit more focus on that, because that is a huge story. And then because all of that is happening, it allows antagonists to kind of rise.
So we talked about Superman and how that could have been a really interesting conversation to decide what it means to bring someone back, what they have lost, are they the same?
Same.
And after he's back, we kind of move pretty quickly to battling Steppenwolf. And I wanted to ask you guys in general, what did you think about Steppenwolf as an antagonist? What did you think about the stakes? Because I thought you had some thoughts about the stakes that you mentioned earlier. Did it work for you? What did you feel about the threat that Earth was under and the problem that the superhero team had to fight against?
Steppenwolf's motivation was that in the past, way past, he had tried to take over the Earth and he was stopped. And
In a really cool flashback.
I was just going to say, in a cool flashback, and we saw a Green Lantern, which, cool. Wouldn't that be cool?
Fighting alongside Zeus.
Yeah.
Which was really cool.
Awesome. So let's see that movie. So his motivation was he was stymied in the past, so he wants to come and do it again. And with the absence of a Kryptonian on Earth, he decides to come back. That's a little thin for me, just because it's not like Superman has been on Earth since Steppenwolf's original attempt. Yeah. He's been on Earth for about 40 years, give or take 10 years. And so Steppenwolf could have come at any point, and then Superman was there, and that was stopping him. And then Superman dies, and so it's like, okay for him to come back. The door is open, right? Now. Yeah.
The movie seemed to justify that by saying that when Lex Luthor created the Doomsday character after regenerating Zod's body in that chamber of creation, that he sent a beacon, and
that was like a notification.
Yeah, like Earth is free for the picking. I think that's what they were trying to do, but I also found it a little thin. What about you, Josh?
It's tough because it feels like, and we've kind of compared it to Avengers already, but in Avengers we have Thanos who basically gifts Earth to Loki, I believe, and gives him the Chitauri to take it over, and so we have this conflict that's like rooted in something larger. I think in Avengers 1 we don't yet know about the Infinity Gauntlet. But we have some sense that it's rooted to something larger in this universe. This kind of feels like I've been slighted and now I'm coming back to claim this thing. It doesn't really feel like it's linked to anything larger. We do hear Steppenwolf mention Darkseid one time, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of turns us on to the fact that, okay, there is a bigger bad guy out here than Steppenwolf. But it didn't seem like there was much of a plan other than like, I'm just going to come and take this back.
And I would love to see a little bit more setup for the next film in each film. And they did a little bit. In BVS, they have Steppenwolf's form.
At the very end.
Yeah, being created out of the goo.
Which I think that was only in the Ultimate Edition, right?
Oh, really?
I don't think it was in the theatrical, was it?
I'm not sure. We did see the formation of the mother boxes as they sort of materialized as well. And you mentioned Darkseid, and for the uninitiated, fascinated. Darkseid seems to be the big baddie in the DC Extended Universe, the forthcoming threat a la Thanos in the Marvel Universe. Steppenwolf being his uncle and eventually lieutenant that arms his forces and marshals them into the field of battle. There seems to be like a familial connection there. For me, Steppenwolf falls into the world of cosmic villain threats that I just don't connect with as much. I really like battles on the ground. Humans, whether they're super or not, versus other humans, whether they're super or not. Somebody who can provide a little bit more grounded conflict is something that I always resonate with more, because what ended up happening for me was that Steppenwolf, an enormous computer-generated character with a computer-generated face, voiced impressively by Kieran Hines, felt very much ineffectual, or it seemed like the seat of his power was in a kind of magical axe, because at the end, when his axe was broken, was the first time that he felt fear.
Yeah.
And he has a legion of parademons who feed on fear, these winged beasts that are his minions, like Wizard of Oz style flying monkeys.
Yeah.
Now the movie posited that men who are defeated by his forces can be turned into parademons, which I thought was a really interesting thing that was never revisited.
Never.
That was the most intriguing part for me, was
Because we didn't really have anybody die. We had like one lab assistant die or something.
the nature of his army I thought was fascinating, but otherwise it ended up being a big, loud guy swinging a sword who seemed to be an axe. Thank you, thank you, and my axe.
Yeah.
Who seemed to be dispatched fairly quickly once Superman was back on the scene.
Superman owned him.
Guys. That was one of my big issues. A lot of the powers for a lot of the people. Aquaman, unclear as to what he can actually do. Outside of water, especially. Really strong? Unclear.
Yeah, does he have like Dasani bombs?
Yeah, like...
It's Arrowhead.
The Flash, he's fast. Great. And I know a little bit more of his powers in like time travel and stuff. Cyborg, he's the internet and he can control it.
And he knows all
basically.
things at all times, but he
Yeah.
doesn't understand the language yet.
Yeah.
And his suit / him is constantly evolving
Yeah.
over the course of
And-
the movie. So he even doesn't know the powers that he has.
Yeah, and he doesn't necessarily know how to control all of those powers. And then Steppenwolf is really strong and can swing his axe. I had a big problem with the fact that Wonder Woman couldn't take him. She got a lot of hits in the face-off. They had an early face-off with Steppenwolf in the sewers.
Under Gotham Harbor.
That was empty. And she got a lot of hits in, and it didn't really seem to affect him. Then she got a lot of hits in before Superman kind of comes in to hit him. And they seemed ineffectual. She hit him with her sword. She used her gauntlets. And I don't really understand that because I've seen what Wonder Woman can do in her film.
She was able to push him back pretty far with her gauntlets,
Yeah.
but that's really the only time that she actually was able to do anything.
Yeah, and I don't get that. She defeated Ares. Ares is a god.
And she did lasso him one time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that.
And
Hold him down.
And the team was able to kind of like do nothing to
He just seemed, for some reason, he was unstoppable, but I don't understand why. And then Superman comes in, and yes, Superman has more powers than Wonder Woman and is overpowered, and he's able to take Steppenwolf down. But the thing is, guys, Steppenwolf is not taken down by the Justice League in the movie titled The Justice League.
Yeah, that's a little...
He's taken down
His
by
axe is taken down.
Yeah, by his parademons. And he's probably not even gone. I assume we are going to see him come back.
So they destroy his axe, and at that point he expresses that he feels fear.
And the unity of the mother boxes.
And his parademons who feed on fear end up destroying him. And I think they were trying to say something about people who use fear and obtain power by being fear-mongers will eventually be destroyed by their own fear. But it was kind of anticlimactic that our heroes didn't dispatch the villain.
That's not the place to make that point.
And the fact that we needed all 6 of them for this guy makes me a little bit scared.
Not all... We needed Superman. I mean,
Yeah.
the collective abilities of 5 of Earth's mightiest heroes...
Nothing.
In fact, when Superman returns to the scene, it seems that he can take him like that. so quickly, so easily, that we have to have him like
Here
civilians.
Civilian.
That we haven't established at all.
The force. Well, yeah, it's not even our 4 that
No.
we've established. It's the random apartment building.
Flash goes to get 4 in the truck that we've seen, and then all of a sudden there's an apartment building close by that has a bunch of civilians in it, and we need Superman to go and lift the building from the ground and carry it far away.
Which is what, I mean, historically that's what he does. He saves
which is
people.
great. I'm happy with Superman saving people, but I would like to know that there are people that need to be saved before.
Well, and also, like, it really did feel like, he is kicking Steppenwolf's butt way too easily. We got to get him out of here and have our 5 other heroes, the non-Superman, fail again before he comes back in.
And wouldn't it have been interesting to see Cyborg work with Aquaman trying to get the boxes apart? Because even then, it was Cyborg and Superman that took the boxes apart and took the hit for it.
Yeah.
And we're already relying so much on Superman. It would have felt really nice to give Aquaman something to do other than being thrown through the air.
Yeah, well, to that point, we really, contrasting this again with the Avengers, we really didn't see any superheroes synergize their powers with any other superheroes, which I think was one of the most fun things about Avengers, where you see Captain America use his shield and Thor hits the shield and it sends a shockwave, and it's just like, oh, cool. 2 of the most powerful Marvel heroes just used both of their superpowers and did something awesome. And we never really saw that.
Yeah.
There was never really any variety.
We
in the
saw
powers
them,
they
like,
were using.
help each other a little bit. Like, Wonder Woman is diving after her sword and doesn't look like she's going to get it. So Flash runs and then dink, dink,
Helps her, yeah.
hits it. Like, we have a few moments like that, but it was never like Wonder Woman. I don't know. I'm not a comic book reader, but like Wonder Woman uses her gauntlets that like gives a thunder blast to Flash so he can go even faster or something.
Or she uses this and it throws Batman into the thing, and he
it would have been nice.
grapples again.
Yeah.
It does seem that Batman drew the short stick in this movie a little bit as well. He's bringing the team together, but he's the only human, true human, and he's getting bruised and battered. And they wanted to pit Batman and Wonder Woman against each other a little bit when he brought Steve Trevor up, so that there's a little bit of emotional things for them to unpack. And I think that those conversations are important, and I would have cared for more of them.
Oh, yeah.
But generally speaking, for me, a lot of this dialogue felt a little bit flat, a little bit forced. What did you guys feel about the writing or maybe the tone? We've talked a lot about story.
I was fine with the tone overall. I also like how it's a little more dark and brooding, and they introduced some fun elements to it. It doesn't all have to be Marvel, like Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor 3, where it's just like a big party. I liked the tone. I felt like some of the...
Spoiler alert for Thor 3.
It's fun. It's a party. I felt like because of the length of the movie, the writing suffered a little bit because it was just asked to do too much. And beyond that, I felt like some of the in-battle banter that I think Marvel has really made popular and does a really great job with felt a little generic to me. It felt a little bit less inspired. What did you think?
When you mean like writing versus story, are you talking about dialogue?
Branching into like the way the film was shot, even the visual tone as well. You mentioned a little generic. The dialogue ended up being a little flat for me. There were some fun moments, and I'm so glad that I didn't watch the trailers, because I heard after the fact that some of my favorite jokes were in the trailers that people have been watching for 6 months. Overall, I thought, like you mentioned, things had to move so quickly that we didn't take the time to unpack how characters are feeling about things. I thought we didn't have moments of quiet between characters that allowed us to come alongside them and care about their journeys. And then visually, my one frustration with this was that it did seem like a video game a lot of the times. The battles felt very generic.
Crystallization of whatever those things were.
And unfortunately, I walked away saying, like, that was fun, but I'm sure it cost a lot of money, but it didn't look real. So that the threat didn't feel real to me because they weren't taking the time to talk about what they were experiencing emotionally. And then visually, it felt a little bit hollow, so I didn't feel the weight of this incoming threat in Steppenwolf and his forces.
Also, we, in our kind of initial conversation about this, CG-wise, it looked like they were playing off of a green screen a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, the lighting didn't match. The eye lines weren't believable. They weren't like specific and focused. It didn't look like the actors were looking at anything in some cases. And so that to me, in an age where, I mean, I work at an animation studio. Well, and we have, I mean, visual feasts like Star Wars and Marvel movies. This one seemed to be a couple years behind.
Yeah.
To me, and it just didn't look like what we were accustomed to seeing, which was disappointing because this is a movie that relies so heavily on that medium.
I agree. I think it looked like a video game. I think that's the best thing. I really liked The Flash. I thought he was fun.
Yeah.
I liked that he had moments of comedy. I think Alfred, had some fun lines.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few lines that I actually struggled to understand what was said, and I was in a very nice theater, so...
From Alfred specifically, or in general?
Alfred, but there were a couple at the end, too, just generally, that I struggled with.
The ancient gravel of an affected Kieran Hines Steppenwolf was very hard to parse at some places. We unpacked a lot of the story notes that we might have had, or things that we thought were fun or interesting, or could have been done a little bit differently, but I think we had a good time, right?
Yeah.
I enjoyed the film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I was wondering, as you look at this fifth film in the DC Extended Universe, what did you appreciate? What are you looking forward to as these films continue to develop and drop in theaters over the next couple of years?
I'm just excited to see where they go. I think if the goal here was to make me excited about the franchise, I think that was successful because I want to see what happens next. I believe that there is a longer term plan than just these kind of movie to movie things, and so I'm interested in seeing how that unfolds. I'm interested in the dynamics. We talked a little bit about the Flash and Batman relationship, which is a really interesting kind of father-son thing. I'm interested in the Batman and Aquaman relationship. I think there were some cool sparks there, and I think if we'd had more time, it would have been interesting to explore that, and I hope they do explore that a little later on. But yeah, I'm excited about, where we go. I'm excited to see maybe a human villain. We've had Doomsday, we've had Steppenwolf, we've had Zod. It'd be nice to see we've had Ares.
I mean, we technically had Lex Luthor, but he was more of a manipulator,
puppet master.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to see one of our human DC villains kind of burst onto the scene
And we have a hint of that in the tag.
Yeah, so yes, there is Deadshot it's Deadshot, right? Deathstroke.
I know.
Sorry.
Their masks are kind of similar.
Sorry, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yes, Deathstroke. So that was a really cool tag there on the end. So I think I'm taking away. I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool, like James Wan I think is attached for Aquaman, which I think could be a really cool take on that franchise.
Which ones do we actually have slated for coming out? Do we know?
We have an Aquaman. I think we have a Flash. We have a Batman.
Okay.
Wonder Woman 2.
Flash is in 2020, so we got a couple of years for that.
A little bit of time. There's a Harley Quinn movie as well, right?
So. And a potential, independent Joker movie that may or may not be connected to the extended universe.
Yeah, right.
So no Cyborg movie.
I'm not sure. There might be one working.
Maybe. I'm not in my sphere of awareness.
Okay. I really like Wonder Woman because I think what they did with the Wonder Woman movie is really great and important. And we need to see more superheroes who are female. And I don't mean to compliment DC by taking down Marvel, but there's not really a lot of female superheroes in the current Marvel universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know we have Black Widow and...
The forthcoming Captain Marvel?
Yeah, but we just don't have them currently, and we have quite a canon so far of films to not have one yet. So that's really disappointing. So I love that Justice League has Wonder Woman, and she's powerful. I would say she's probably one of the most powerful other than Superman, which is, I think, one of the reasons why I was also a little disappointed to see her seemed very ineffectual in this film.
Yeah, she a god.
I'm just excited about all the Wonder Woman movies, and I love that we have female directors. Not because I think only female directors can direct female superhero movies, but because I think it's important for us to have that in the industry. I'm excited for The Flash. I like that character. I like Ezra Miller. When you said that it's coming out in 2020, I guess that's only 3 years away, but it feels like he should age a little bit between now and then, and so
3 years is ages in the cinematic universe world.
right,
That makes sense.
right. So I'm like, okay, is he going to be a lot more established? Because some of the things that made him really interesting and endearing is he just feels like he's coming into his own right now as a character, and I would like a movie about that. Kind of basically a DC Spider-Man. I think it's fair to say. I'm interested in a Ben Affleck Batman movie. I will probably always go into the DC movies with different expectations than I would for other films like that. I have very high expectations for the Marvel movies. For the DC movies, I was disappointed in some of the early ones. And I'm not a huge Superman fan. Just...
Is he overpowered, you think?
Guys, he can do everything. Like, the fact that he died, like, I found kind of ridiculous. I will watch all of the DC movies. I will go and see them, and I will look forward to them, but I'm not going to go in with high expectations. And I will have fun, and that's why I go to see movies. And I like to talk about it with these guys afterwards.
That's also
and other
why we go
people.
to see
That
movies.
is also why we go to see movies. And they're really comfy chairs.
I am a Flash fan. I thought that the warmth and vulnerability and fun and youth that he injected into the movie was maybe a saving grace for the whole picture.
Yeah.
I was doubtful of the Ezra Miller casting, and I take it all back. He was such a fun avatar for us to get into this world. In the same way that Spider-Man is a son to Tony Stark's Iron Man, he has that position of awe and looking at Ben Affleck's Batman with such wide-eyed wonder, and he's just excited to be a part of the team, and he needs friends because he's socially awkward, and I thought that
But
was...
he's also not necessarily brave yet.
Not
or
yet,
courageous,
yeah.
which is so cool.
And that was probably my favorite part of the movie, was like this Schindler's List moment where Batman says to Flash's character, who says, like, I just I just go fast and push people out of the way. I've
don't
never
fight bad
really
guys."
fought a bad guy before. He says, well, then just save one. Save one person, and then you'll know what to do. The idea being that once he realized that he can help in his own way with his skill by saving one, he's like, oh, I can save another one, and I can do one at a time. And that moment I thought was really nice because
it's probably my favorite moment in the movie.
it speaks to what all of us can do in helping with what we have little by little, which was really nice. I loved the splashes of humor and those potential relationships, like you mentioned, between Batman and Aquaman, Batman and Wonder Woman. I want to see those developed more, such that we really care about these characters and whether or not they are at odds, and we want to see them unified, and we want to see them working together and synergizing their powers and being Earth's heroes, demonstrating that teamwork makes the dream work. So I had a lot of fun. It's easy to unpack after the fact, like this story thing, that story thing, or this villain weakness, or that dialogue choice. But I also look forward to how they're expanding the world. In the post-credits scene, we get to see Lex Luthor saying, we need a league of our own. And I think it's fun to see how this world will be built. And I look forward to the movies maybe being received more and more warmly, such that I don't have to go in like Victoria with handicapped expectations.
I mean, I don't want to.
I don't either.
But it's a franchise that's still finding its footing.
Yeah.
They're still kind of figuring out how they're going to do things.
Yeah.
And so I think we are living in the age of the Marvel movie, and they're trying to make their own spot in that. And that is not an easy thing to do.
No.
Exactly. I don't want or need a carbon copy of what they're doing at Disney. I do look forward to DC movies that I can get behind because I'm for them. Like, I want them to succeed.
Yeah, when I say I go in with low expectations, I should say I'm going in rooting for it to win. I'm going in saying I want this movie to be good, and I'm supporting this movie. I mean, I'm going opening weekend, hopefully opening night if I can. I want it to succeed because I want more movies like this to be made and to be made well.
And what you're probably also saying is that for Marvel movies, you go in with a standard you probably don't hold many other movies to.
No.
Where it's like, I also expect, when I go to a Marvel movie, I expect to be amazed. And fairly consistently, I have not been let down. And so that's why when you go to a Marvel movie, it's like, not just any movie will do here.
Yeah.
It's in the name. You want to marvel at what they've done, and their machine is so well oiled, and what they've done in creating a cinematic universe is a towering achievement. And I think we all want DC to do the same because we love the characters and we like good, solid action movies and comic books as well.
And if you want more on our thoughts on Marvel, watch our Thor 3 review.
We're on Patreon.
Well, thank you so much. Do you guys have any other thoughts?
I would say closing thoughts for me is go see the movie. It's worth it.
Yeah.
You want to see BVS, if possible, the director's cut or the ultimate edition before going in. But it's a fun movie, and it's worthwhile.
Yeah. I definitely found it helpful to watch the director's cut of BVS before going in. And if you're like, oh, I really didn't love BVS, same page. It wasn't my favorite film. But watching the director's cut helped me a lot. Because one of the things that I didn't love about BVS was I just found it a little confusing. I didn't understand sometimes or often what the motivation was and why Batman was having these fears about Superman and Superman was so upset at Batman's tactics. And I think that the Ultimate Edition, is what they call it, is very helpful in clarifying some of those motivations. And it's also helpful just as context going into this film, since so much of it is about Superman's resurrection.
Yeah. I tip my hat to Warner Brothers. It's not an easy thing to be playing a little bit of catch-up and to try to get your team together after movie 5 instead of movie 9 or 10 like they do with Marvel. So a lot of pieces moving, a lot of plates to keep spinning. I think it's fun. I think there's room for improvement, but I had a great time with you guys. I enjoyed the laughs. I love that they are listening to sort of what the fans want, and they're trying to tell a good story well, and that's what we're all doing. So cheers to you for making a big, fun movie, and we look forward to everything that you do in the future.
Best theme song. She has the best theme song.
She does.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But my one thing that I was a little bit frustrated with is the disappearance of the boxes after they were separated, and then they just
They got
I guess they got wrecked.
yeah. I don't know where they went.
Also, the Atlanteans are like protecting their box. They are vigilant. And the Amazons are like guarding the box because they can see the threat. And I understand they can see that the boxes are active, and so they know that there's a forthcoming threat. But Cyborg just goes and grabs the box. He's like, my dad used this to make me. Like, okay, cool, so that's how you got made. But then, when they resurrect Superman, they all have to, like, contain this Clark Kent whose mind is addled and who may or may not have a soul. So they set the box over to the side.
No, it falls on top of a cop car.
Yeah, nobody goes after it.
So
split the team, split
like,
the party.
they're all focusing on Superman, and Steppenwolf's like, boom tube down. Got the box? Like, he's got the box.
Which we see in the background,
Yeah.
by the
Because
way.
you let him get the box. And I understand that you don't want to say boom tubes in the movies because the audiences might not be ready for it, but he just boom tube y'all.
Is that what is
They're called boom tubes.
No, is it really? That's
Steph was
such a
like,
comic book.
Bye guys, got it.
Heimdall, open the boom tube.
Bifrost is kind of cool. Boom tube.
I don't know. I kind of love it. Well, on that note,
We're Screen14 Pictures.
yep, I'm Victoria.
I'm Josh.
And I'm boom tube.
No.
Grant, I'm Grant.